silent sages speak. And for me, silence has been the biggest teacher. When I lived in Tiruvannamalai, when I went to Ramana Maharshi's ashram.
Welcome to Silent Sage Speak, the podcast where timeless wisdom meets the present moment. I'm your host, Sukhdev Virdee, and in each episode, we delve into the profound teachings of non-dual masters, those who have transcended the boundaries of duality and revealed the simplicity of existence. Join us on this journey beyond words as we explore the essence of being with those who have realized the truth that goes beyond language, beyond thought. Open your mind, silence your chatter, and let the wisdom of silent sages resonate within you. Today, my guest is a spiritual mentor who was born in Mangalore, India, into a deeply spiritual family. He had his first awakening experience at the age of 5 and has been a clairvoyant and energy healer since childhood. He's had the pleasure of learning from many different awakened masters. We're going to hear about that from him. Today, he lives in California and Hawaii, from where he coaches and mentors others on the same path using his own system called the Integrated Awakening Process. I'd like to welcome to the show Ra. Welcome to the show, Ra.
Thank you so much, Sukhdev.
I
So
I
great to
I
be here.
love I love the name Ra. It just sounds like a lion. Is it related to the Egyptian god or the sun god? It is? Okay.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
I went through the notes that you sent me about your life journey, and it's amazing, fascinating. It's almost like reading a story of maybe like The Alchemist or autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda, something very similar to that. And I want to hear it from your in your own words from you. Right from childhood, you had the awakening at 5. Let us talk us through how it all started.
Yeah, so um, life for me has been full of these experiences of remembering in different ways, remembering my past lives, remembering why I'm here. And the earliest memory of that for me was, in my grandparents' house in Mangalore near Mulki. Uh, in Mulki near Mangalore. uh, and my grandparents lived right in front of this beautiful temple. And this is where I have lived my formative years in my childhood. And that was a big part of my upbringing. But when I was around 5 years old, I remember this was my first awakening. Something in me just brought me to the front of the house where I could see the temple, and everybody else was sleeping. And this is a big old house, and built in this kind of. It was built by my grandfather, and I kind of toddled out there, and something in me woke up, and I was crying to Divine Mother. My mother used to, sing and do all these bhajans, etc. And I had that connection with Divine Mother the most. And I was crying because I knew I was here for something very powerful, and I didn't want to forget that. Because I somehow in that moment I remembered I want to do my life's work. I don't want to wait anymore. Divine Mother, give me whatever I'm here for. I want to start doing it right now. It was so funny remembering it back, but that's how it was. I was kind of yearning to do my life's work. And later in my life, I remembered past lives where I had come into this incarnation on earth, and I had got distracted. I had not done my life's work so much. And, um, you know, in that innocence, somehow it seemed so clear that I'm here to do something deeply spiritual, and I don't want to get lost in samsara again. So that was the gist of that. And I want to say thank you so much for having me here. I love the title of your show, Silent Sages Speak, and for me, silence has been the biggest teacher. When I lived in Tiruvannamalai, when I went to Ramana Maharshi's ashram, there's this statue of Dakshinamurti, mm, the the guru, the original guru, the teacher who taught through silence. And every time I stood in front of that statue, I felt the depth of that teaching represented from there. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And you've really just mellowed the whole thing down. I started off with all this energy and you just brought it all back down. Wow, beautiful. You said at the age of 5 in that house in Mangalore. This is what year roughly we're talking about? The 80s, the 90s? Um,
I was born in 88, so this was,
so this would be like
yeah,
early
like
90s,
yeah,
the early
early
90s.
90s. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Mm.
And from what I've read, you were born into a spiritual family. Your father was an energy healer. What I read is he learned energy healing from Sai Baba himself, Shirdi Sai Baba.
Yeah, yeah. So this was before I was born, and um, he was somebody who was an atheist all his life
Your dad.
until, yes,
Okay.
and until he met my mother.
Mhm.
And once they got married, something changed in him. He was still an atheist, but one day he was reading his book. He used to read a lot, and he was sitting on his chair, and he had this experience where he fell into some sort of a void, and he it was an experience beyond time and space. And in that experience, he said, there's this old man who came to me and started speaking to me and saying, what are you doing here, wasting your life running after money? And he was a businessman who didn't really have any other spiritual inklings whatsoever. Actually, he would, whenever my mother practiced any spiritual things, he was like, what are you doing? Like, he would let her do it, but he said, okay, don't involve me in any of this. It's just your thing. So at that point, he didn't even know who was Shirdi Sai Baba. So he was like, this old man came to me and he was telling me all these things. And, then after a few hours, he kind of woke up from that experience, and he had fallen down from his chair, and he came out of it and thought he had gone mad, or, in the experience, he thought he had died. Uh, so once he woke up from it, he was like, I've gone completely bonkers. Uh, and he,
Yeah.
for a long time, tried to understand what was happening. And eventually, when he was visiting somebody's home, he saw a picture of Shirdi Sai Baba. And then he told my mother, this was the guy who came in my dream, in my experience. He didn't know what it was, whether a dream. He didn't have any context or words for it. And then eventually he started trusting that and building that connection. And Shirdi Sai Baba would come to him and teach him in these experiences intuitively, um, healing. and he had many different ailments himself, and because of those teachings, he was able to cure it for himself.
Okay.
And then, it's a long story, but
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually he cured somebody else, and the word spread. And in our little village,
Yeah.
uh, every Sunday morning, a long line would
Wow.
form in front of the house.
Yeah.
People from all different places would come, just by word of mouth, no advertisements, nothing. People would just
Yeah.
like be attracted, and he would only do this on a Sunday. He cut a deal with Shirdi Sai Baba. It's like, one day of a week I'll do this work, but I want to continue my business. And then
Wow.
eventually he had to leave everything and be a full-time healer. That was his
Oh,
destiny, but he resisted it as much as he could. um, yeah, and eventually he ended up healing close to, healing or helping close to 1 million people in different ways.
wow. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shirdi Sai Baba has these are powerful beings. My
Mhm.
experiences with Shirdi Sai Baba are also at a
Mhm.
different, so very similar. Like like comes into visions and dreams. And my first experience with him was when I came down to India, and it was my first time in India. I had never been to India, and in Bombay, had no friends, no relatives, and my friend from London had flown down, and he was staying here in Bombay, and so he woke up one morning and he said, "Sukhdev, tomorrow we're gonna go to Pune." And we're gonna party all night. It's a weekend, and at that time, Pune had all these nightclubs that were open till late. And I said, "Fine." So next morning, I got ready and I reached his place, and he says, "Pune trip cancelled. We're going to Shirdi. Sai Baba has called us." And I was like, "Sai Baba, who? Who? What? Who's this?" And then I reached there, and for me, it was a it was a shock. I've never seen so many people. uh, about maybe about 300,000 people standing in a line to go into the temple for his darshan. And so we stood there, and for about after about 3.5 hours, we got to the Sai Baba's murti, and within 2 seconds, the volunteers there tap tap pushed us out. And I was like, "Hey, hello! We spent 3 hours just standing in the line. You're pushing us out in 3 seconds." And I was so upset. And then when I got back to Bombay in the night, Sai Baba comes in my dreams. I don't see him,
Mm.
but I feel his presence. And I feel this power. I know I'm at his feet. And
Mm.
so after that, many more experiences. But anyway,
Wow.
how did you get into energy healing then? Did you learn it from your dad, or um,
Hmm.
you've
Yeah.
been
When
doing it
when
since childhood as well? You said.
Yes. So I was very young. I think somewhere around 8 to 10 when I first started seeing auras,
Wow.
and and you know other beings and chakras and things like that. And for me, somehow it felt so normal. I didn't know other people couldn't see it,
Yeah.
uh, and I was like, oh. Um, Somehow I started noticing that I see it in a way more than I started seeing it. It's like, oh, this. I was telling my father about these things, so it's very interesting how I was understood. And now, after working with a lot of people who are awakening and start seeing things or hearing things, and how their families treat them like they're going crazy, I'm I'm so fortunate. I had parents, especially my father, who could see very clearly, and he would kind of tell people all sorts of things about their energy body and their how it's related to physical body. And when I started, I was seeing these things much more. It was not very kind of detailed, I would say, but I would still see a lot. And my father was so encouraging that he would take me with him to his healing center. And he was like, "Oh, this is great that you can see it. Come." And like his way was, um, every morning he would meet new people who would come to him, and he would scan them in a way. He would do this. His method was like he was kind of sending energy through his hands, and when the energy came back, he would see it, and then he would tell them, okay, this is happening in your energy, etc. And then he was like, okay, now see, when I do this, what happens, tell me. And he would first scan and then ask me first what I saw, and then he would say things. And he's like, oh, and then do you notice that thing that you missed? Things like this. And I was really fortunate that I was able to be mentored by somebody like that. So yeah, since my childhood, I was able to see
Yeah.
that.
Wow, wow. So for all those listening, we're gonna get into non-duality, but this man's story is so fascinating. You've got to listen to it. So after that, then you became a teenager, from what I read, a rebellious one. Then somehow you got into Adi Shankar Acharya's books and his teachings, and then that from mysticism, you now came into Jnana Yoga, knowledge, and the wisdom of
Hmm.
non-duality, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
how was the shift for the from mysticism and then suddenly in non-duality when you realize or you're told anything you experience is not the truth, so it does not matter what you experience. Yeah. Talk us
Yes,
how
yes.
how it all shifted from that to non-duality.
So yeah, so with a little bit of background, like it came back to the first experience where I felt if I am able to really do my life's work without forgetting, that would be ideal. But what happened was, um, in my childhood, even though I had all this support and everything, there was a time when I stopped completely caring anything about spirituality. um, and that was the teenage
That must be, yeah.
rebellious period. I would play games 24/7, Counter Strike. I almost became a professional gamer, and I failed my exams. And I was a brilliant student when I really cared about it, because I've got really good marks before that, but I got zero in math and failed in all subjects. And my parents, my extended family, they were like so surprised, and they're like, okay, we are sending you to study with your uncle. He was a gold medalist in this Suratkal College or something in Mangalore. It's very
Okay.
popular,
Okay.
and it's like, go study with him. And he was reading Adi Shankaracharya's book, Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination between truth and untruth, to be translated. And he was not just like reading it, he was studying it deeply. He was he was brilliant at explaining math and science and everything to me. He made it actually interesting. But what I got more out of that was, in between teaching me, he would sit there with this book in his hand, and he would look off into eternity, like he would be sitting there for hours. And that was his way of like contemplating what he read. And I was like, what are you reading?
Yeah.
What's going on? And then he first kind of didn't tell me much, but when I persisted, then one of the first things I remember he told me is like, you see all this, all the things that you see, all that all that's happening right here. There's nothing outside of you. All that is Maya. And that blew my mind. And he asked all sorts of questions. So he was like, try to imagine a color that you've never seen before.
You can't.
Uh, yeah, I didn't have any answers to these questions, and they really made me kind of relook at life from a different perspective, and so many different things about how everything is Maya and what is Brahma, what is our true nature. He also talked about karma. He also talked about, how things, manifest and all. It just made me come back to that spiritual path
Yeah, yeah.
in such a deep way again. And I forgot about the games and everything that I was playing completely. My life
Okay.
completely shifted. And I'm like, spirituality is my life. I don't want anything else in life again. And that made me so hungry for spirituality that I started reading other books. And my father already had this book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yeah.
And I asked my father, what book should I read? Like I'm really, and he's like, I have all these books. He had this huge collection of books. He's like, read anything. So I was looking through, and Autobiography of a Yogi stood out to me. And once I read that, uh, I was so fascinated by all these things that you read in the book. And I couldn't put it down. I read it so fast.
Wow.
And I I wanted to become a monk. I wanted to leave everything, and I was like, "This is my life. The goal of my life is to attain nirvikalpa samadhi." That's the technical term. Um, Paramahamsa Yogananda uses about a way of being completely one with everything, where there is no thought, there is complete oneness. Um, but I was like, this is self-realization is what my life is all about. So I don't want to waste time doing anything else. I'm gonna leave my parents, leave my
Oh,
friends, and I'm gonna run away to Yogoda. In Ranchi, there is this ashram from Paramahamsa Yogananda. I'm gonna run away and go there and ask to be initiated into monkhood.
this is just
And
like his story, isn't it? Exactly like his
yeah,
story.
yeah, that's that pivotal point in my life. And from there, Shirdi Sai Baba um, was the one who I was connecting most at that time too, because of my mother. She was really devoted to Shirdi Sai Baba, and
Yeah.
she also had one more person who was a channeler of sorts, and she would connect to Shirdi Sai Baba. And from that way, I got a message from Shirdi Sai Baba saying, if you go to live in an ashram, you'll find that there is a lot more duality, actually.
Wow.
And you'll find politics, you'll find things that you won't like. So um, take 5 years. Wait for 5 years. I will show you the way. You will find the right teachers. I will take you through this path. I will guide you. And I I trusted that. I canceled my running away plan, and but I was like looking for my teacher in every way I could. And about for 7 years, I looked for a teacher, mainly first in the Kriya Yoga, um, you know, um, kind of lineage. And I visited all these ashrams, and because my father was famous and he knew a lot of other teachers and etc. He would come on TV um, teaching Sai Satcharita, etc. So a lot of people knew him. So I had access to amazing teachers through him. So I would go with him whenever he went to meet people. And frankly, for 7 years, I didn't feel there was anybody who could really show me that depth that I read in that book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
Okay.
So I kind of got disappointed. I stayed only a few months with any teacher, and I would just leave when I felt this is not it. But this also gave me the opportunity to explore a lot of different paths, which was really helpful later. But when I came to Tiruvannamalai, after those 7 years of longing and searching, and I had completely given up, actually I had given up looking for a teacher, and I said, life is showing me what I need to see, because I noticed when I trusted life, when I trusted my higher self, I was being led in the most beautiful way to whatever was needed next. And I really, felt that was enough at that point. So I actually, before Tiruvannamalai, I went to Auroville. I don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
You know
That's
Auroville?
the reason. Yeah, that's the reason I'm saying your life is so fascinating. Go on, go on, go on.
Awesome. Not a lot of people know Auroville, so I'm happy that you
Sri
know that.
Aurobindo.
And
He's got
yes,
great
yes.
stories. I
Mm,
was I am still a devotee of Krishna, and so was Aurobindo. And his
yeah.
stories about Krishna are amazing. So go on, go on.
Wonderful. So, okay. Um, a close devotee of my father, who was from Germany, told me about Auroville, and he said, I'm going there. If you want to come with me. And this my stories are long, but I hope they're
Don't worry.
not boring you. But
Uh, we'll this is all interesting. Though it may not be right now, we've not yet come down to non-duality, but these stories, like everybody who's read autobiography of Yogananda, the stories are so fascinating. And
yeah.
even though you understand in non-duality, that's not the absolute truth that you need to be searching for. But it's
Mm,
good to read and understand or hear these stories. Why? Because when a seeker is going through this same process and happens to experience them, he can at least
mm,
relate that I heard this from this person. And if I didn't hear such stories, I'm telling you, I would still be looking for visions and looking for God somewhere. I
mm,
would still be
mm.
doing that if I didn't hear the
Yeah,
stories of people who actually had visions or had, deities coming right up to them, playing with them, and then they dismissed it as that's not the absolute truth.
yeah,
So these
yeah.
stories are very important for that reason. All right, go on.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Give you a little bit of context here. Um, after I went deeply into spirituality again, after a few years, I started just following what was being brought to me and following Shirdi Sai Baba's guidance whenever I got that, and reading and meditating a lot, etc. And I was guided to learn psychology by Shirdi Sai Baba. And when I learned psychology, I got into acting because of that. And
Wow.
it's strange, but we had these competitions, inter-college competitions, and
Yeah.
there was this thing that, oh, if we did a play, then it would be really helpful for the team. And I put together a skit from psychology, and that got me into acting because I felt it was really spiritual to
Yeah.
explore a part of yourself. And I really enjoyed that so much. And that's how I got into acting. And because my father was a photographer, I also became a photographer learning from him. And when I was called to come to Oroville, I was doing many photography projects, as well as I was also acting in 2 movies.
Wow.
And and these were, like um, projects that were kind of, they had some shooting and then there was some time and all that. So I had a lot of free time in between. But when I was called to Oroville, I felt it was so significant. So I had to take out some time. So I said, okay, I'm going to go for 7 days to Oroville with this friend. And, like I spent probably 3 days in Pondicherry, going to Aurobindo Ashram. And it was such a powerful experience, just going to his Samadhi place, etc.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm loving this. And then I went to Oroville. The first day I go there,
Yeah.
I meet a director who's from USA, and she says to me, um, "I want you to act in my play. You know, I want you to take the lead role in the play, William Shakespeare play, The Merchant of Venice, where you play Shylock." And I'm like, really? When she invited me to take the lead role, which I knew meant staying there for 6 to 7 months at least.
Oh, okay.
Even though my mind knew that, I felt my heart saying such a loud yes that I could not think about it even. It just kind of surpassed my brain, came from the heart, and just like, yes, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those 7 months that I stayed there became my preparation to come to Tiruvannamalai.
Oh, okay.
And in that preparation, I had to let go of so much. It was a huge catharsis, actually, for me, acting in this play. And as I was an actor who only played these nice, happy roles, like the chocolate boy roles that you would call, like this hero who's so sweet and nice and good to everybody. And being a spiritual person, I was never angry. I always controlled myself, and good person, right? So I had bottled up all my um, negative
Emotions. Yeah.
emotions, and playing this negative role. If you know Shylock,
Yeah.
he's
Took them out.
yeah, he's somebody who's who tries to kill the merchant, and yeah, and it's a role where it brings out all your anger and frustration and all these things. And when I was doing rehearsals for the play, I would get so angry for no apparent reason. And I'm just in my room, and I would get so angry, and I would scream at I don't know what, but there was no particular dimension, I mean direction to it. But I was getting so angry, I had to express it. And sometimes I was riding my motorcycle, uh, and in the forest of Oroville, and I would get angry again, and I would scream out. And it kind of like playing this role um, again and again in rehearsals really helped me tap into those emotions, and they just got released, but in a safe space, because I didn't hit anybody with it. I wasn't harmful to anybody, or even to myself. I punched the wall once, but that was it. And kind of let my heart open, and then
Yeah.
being in Oroville, connecting with the energy of the mother, um,
Yeah.
you know, and meditating, in these beautiful serene places, kind of made me be able to feel my heart and get clarity. And after I finished the play, um, and I can keep talking about these experiences because as I speak, there's one more that came up on the third day of this play. We played it 3 times. That was the first time I experienced complete being in flow state, and that was so powerful and amazing. And I knew there was something really powerful happening after that. But after the play, I felt completely lost and I didn't know what to do with my life now that this thing I was doing for 7 months was over. And
Yeah.
that is when I had a dream one morning showing me the the board which said Tiruvannamalai this way in the morning. And I I was so fascinated what this Tiruvannamalai is. I had heard so much about it in Auroville because people had told me. I had heard about Ramana Maharshi
Okay.
before. I think my mother, because she read from all teachers, had told me something about it. Um, but I was so pulled to go there. So I went there, and within 24 hours, I found my teacher. The next
Oh,
morning,
wow.
um, somebody invited me to come to what they called a satsang. And for me, satsang only meant, you go and you sing bhajans and
Okay.
you kind of, do these these things that old people do, kind of things.
Yeah.
That's the connotation I had from my teenage years when I was rebellious.
Right.
So like, what's a satsang? Uh, so I was fascinated, and I went there, and I was very open. And this teacher walked in, and I had no idea anything about him. And he was dressed in black, just like you. You are wearing a black T-shirt. He
Oh,
was just
I wore
wearing
black.
this.
Yeah.
And for me, on my search for a teacher, I used to kind of try to measure them from like, oh, is he enlightened? Is he not? Kind of like, our kind of ideas of other people trying to kind of answer questions that nobody can really answer, right? And with that, I was like, who is this guy? And I really felt at the same time in my heart there was a deeper feeling about him, and I just became more open. I let go of those judgments, and in that first meeting, I knew I was my search for a guru, um, search for a teacher, has ended deep within me, and you know I had no idea even now. This was the next morning. So much about Ramana Maharshi, or
Oh,
all this, because I had just arrived in Tiruvannamalai. I had not even visited the Ramana ashram, right? And then in the next 10 days, I had experiences of a series of samadhis, a series of experiences which um, were so out of this world that shook me up so hard and turned my entire life upside down. And I couldn't, in the days and weeks and months that followed, uh, it had all sorts of effects on me, including being completely dysfunctional at some points because I had no idea what was life again anymore. And all the previous, I've had a miraculous life until then also, all these visions and, amazing experiences. But what I experienced there was kind of dwarfed everything else. As you said earlier, all this mystical experiences were like, okay, now now I know that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and
Wow. Just to go a little bit back for those people who don't know of Auroville, Aurobindo, and Pondicherry, when I heard about it and I went and just read a bit about Auroville, I was like, I want to shift there. What a place. It's the only place in India where money is not used for transaction. Everybody is given a certain amount of token money, which they can use within the community. It's made up of just 5 villages, and everybody is using natural resources for everything. The children learn to play in the mud. You do all those things that we used to do in our childhood. Everybody is teaching and giving back to the society in the way that they can, and they're all being given a certain amount of token money which they can use anywhere. So there's no physical money. It's the only city where this it's not used. And the houses, you've lived there. I've just seen pictures. I was so amazed. I said, I want to shift there. The houses are like on treetops, like cars, old cars. People have made huts. Those are the kind of houses they live in. So
mm,
Oroville is something that I would love to go and visit. And
yeah,
now, when you come down to Trivunamalai, now it's Ramana Maharshi, now it's
mm,
non-duality. Now it, like you said, it dwarfs up everything. You know, uh, Autobiography of a Yogi is one book which I tried to read about maybe 10 times, and I just could not read it because I
mhm,
was already into non-duality at that time. I was reading the Upanishads and Shankaracharya, and they were negating everything that is experienced. And Autobiography of a Yogi was all about experiences and miracles. I was like, this is not what I want to know. I want to know what the truth is. And then once I got the truth, then I went back and I read the autobiography. Then I could understand it now, coming back into duality from the non-dual
mm,
point. uh,
yeah,
so for me, uh, it was a, I think it was a good thing for me because in the beginning, when I had my first experience was when I was like thrown into the nothingness. I became one with the universe. My attention, wherever it went, I was there then and that, and I didn't know what it was. I spent 8 months, 10 months trying to recreate that same experience because I wanted it
mm,
again. I didn't know what it was. And had I not got these teachings of what you experience is not the truth, I would still
mm,
be searching for those things. Now you come down to Trivunamalai and Ramanamashi. A lot of people who have been there have had, we've heard so many stories about experiences of people who've maybe had the darshan of Ramana Maharshi, or they've had profound awakenings over there itself. I'm sure that mountain is so sacred. Ramana
mhm,
himself says
mhm,
it's
mhm.
Shiva living there, and
Yes.
now it probably negates everything that has happened in your life till now, isn't it?
Yeah, for
I
a
believe.
time, um, it was a lot about negation. It, it was saying it was showing me that all that happened in a way was a beautiful dream, nothing more than just a kind of a story also in a way, because I remembered it, and it was the past, and no matter how beautiful the past was, or also it was not always beautiful, there was also a lot of difficulties too. um, it was just a dream, and it took me into seeing that in a very powerful way also, because my teacher, I asked him, what's your main teaching? He said, let go of all stories, number one. Number two, come back to the present moment. Again and again and again. And number three, do this every moment radically. And this was what he told me. This was the practice he asked me to do. And especially because of letting go of all stories,
Yeah.
and because I had so many stories throughout my life, and I haven't touched upon a lot of things related to how I went into channeling and all that. That's a huge another episode. Um, but all these things, that all the paths I've walked, all these miraculous experiences, I noticed they were now stories in my mind which were not letting me see the truth clearly. Even though I had experienced those samadhis where, even if I tried, there was no I even to kind of try. It's so hard to even speak about it because the experience is so beyond words and concepts. It's so abstract. But coming back from that, the mind tried to grasp it and try to make it into a story again,
Yeah.
and try to make it into one more experience that I can take and say, oh, this was my
Yeah.
experience. And you know, and I struggled with that. uh, my my teacher, he was so gracious to let me attend his intensive retreat for 10 days. um, on And I didn't have any money at that time because I was a struggling actor and whatnot. But he still let me attend it. And in those 10 days, what happened, uh, it and he left. He left back. He went back to Europe. He lived in Germany, and because he left, I was left all alone, trying to kind of pick up these pieces that were, shattered now.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just said, I don't know what to do with my life now. I'm just going to live in Tiruvannamalai. And by now, because of Orwell and Tiruvannamalai, all my acting projects and all my photography projects uh, were completely kind of, you know, it was hopeless. I couldn't revive them. uh, but yeah, I just kind of like gave up everything, and I was like, okay, with whatever money I have left in savings, I'm just gonna try to live here for a while and figure out what happened, figure out how I can continue uh, with all that has happened. That was just so out of the ordinary. So yes, it kind of negated everything in a way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
much later, years later, there was integration where I saw how everything came together also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, this is great. And Ramana's one of his most famous disciples, Papaji. You must have heard of him.
Yeah.
Papaji. His story is that when he went to the Trivannamalai, and he went there to meet Ramana. And so the story is that Ramana appeared at Papaji's house in Punjab, because Papaji was out all over the country looking for somebody who could show him God. And he traveled, met all the people at the ashrams, and finally gave up and went back home in Punjab. And then suddenly one day a sadhu appears at his house, knocks on the door, and says, can you give me something to eat? And Papaji invites him inside for lunch, and he has lunch with him. And while he's having lunch, he asks him, do you know anybody who can show me God? I'm looking for such a person, and I've been around the whole country. I haven't found anybody. And this person says, you should go to Trivannamalai. I think there's somebody there who can help you.
Mm.
And in 2 weeks' time, Papaji was going to start a job somewhere in the south, in South India. So he thought, I'll just leave a week earlier, and I'll go to that mountain, and I'll meet this person that this person spoke about, and
Mm.
see if, it's true. And so when he reaches there and he goes into the ashram, he sees the same old man, the sadhu that was at his house. And he said, this is a fraud guy. He came there just to call me back here so that I could come to him. And so he was ready to leave. And the caretakers, they asked him, why are you leaving so quickly? And he said, this man here is a fraud. He came there to the Punjab, and he would told me to come here and meet somebody who could show me God, and now he himself is seated there as a guru. And so they told him, they all told him, you're mistaken. He has not left this place for the past 50 years. He has not stepped outside this mountain. So he thought, Papaji thought, okay, there must be something here, so I'll stay back. I'll stay for a
Mm,
week and then I'll leave. So, but he didn't stay at the ashram. He went over on the other side of the hill, and he stayed there. And his story is also another powerful story. Now, we can talk about that some other time. So when his time came to leave, so he decided, let me go and tell this person, bye, I'm leaving. It was good. Thank you for looking after me, but no thanks. I didn't get anything here anyway. So
mm,
he
mm.
goes there, and Ramana looks at him and asks him, "Oh, where have you been for a week? You came and then you disappeared." And Papaji says, "I was on the other side of the hill, and I was playing with Krishna on the other side of
Yes,
the
I
same hill."
remember this story. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And Papaji was such a devotee of Krishna. He was so devoted that Krishna would manifest in front of him, and they would dance all night long. Papaji would dress up like a gopi, put on lipstick, put on a sari, and he would dance with Krishna. And then Krishna would disappear after the night. He was that devoted. And so he thought, I have been, having a great time with Krishna, and this man here might not even have had a vision of him. So he told him, really proudly that I've been dancing with Krishna. And so Ramana is very composed. He says, "Oh, that's good. Do you see him now?" And Papaji is taken aback. He says, "No." And Ramana tells him, "The God that comes and goes is not the real God."
Mm,
Yeah. And that, why, again, these stories are important is because if I hear that, immediately I should understand that that's not something I should pursue. It's not something I should look forward to envision and manifest Krishna and do all those things myself. Uh, so his
mm,
stories there are so powerful, and
mm.
all experience is negated. Everything becomes a
Yes.
story. And then when you understand it, it's like your entire life has been a lie.
Mm, mm.
It's like a
Yeah,
cosmic joke. It's like everything in my entire life really did not happen.
yeah.
And like you said, your ego will fight back. It's like just
Hmm.
one more experience, let's get back to work. And
Yeah,
I don't know how you got the strength to still keep on going and still seek further. How did that
yeah.
come? Did you have some guidance?
No, I was left in in the dark in a way, but because I lived in Tiruvannamalai for a few months after my teacher left, um, I felt that the energy of Tiruvannamalai, the mountain Arunachala, and going to Ramana Maharshi's ashram and meeting people who talked about this, and that kind of really helped me. um, and it was I was having really strange experiences. I even just a normal walk was not a walk anymore. I was riding on my motorcycle, and it became just like every single part of it was, I couldn't count how long it was, how short it was. Time made no sense, distance made no sense. And I was like a little baby in this new world, and I had to figure it out in a way. And all the things I knew before were somehow not useful to me anymore. And yeah, everything was, in a way, everything that I had stored in my stories was, in a way, taken away from me. And yeah, it really affected my human self. In that time before I could integrate these things, I went into deep depression for a long time. I went into complete hopelessness, meaninglessness, to the point that I didn't even want to exist anymore. At one point, I was like, I don't care for anything anymore. um, I I don't see the the reason to eat or drink anymore. The reason to get out of bed. There was one time I didn't get out of bed for 4 days. Not even the bedroom. Didn't get out of bed. Didn't eat. Didn't drink. And I, you know, had to surrender. I had to surrender. That is what kept me going, because anything I tried didn't work. Fortunately, because of this long search before having these experiences for about 7 years or more, and the education I got from my mother, who was always reading these amazing scriptures and books, and for example, Guru Charitra, Sai Satcharita, and all this. And this kind of gave me the patience, and the understanding that I should surrender. And Ramana Maharshi spoke a lot about surrender. Ramana Maharshi said there are two ways. One is, you can do self-inquiry and find out for yourself who you are. Go within and just ask yourself, who am I? And you will find the answer. Or completely surrender and it will be done for you.
Yeah.
And I didn't know which one to do, so I tried my best to do both. I was like, I don't know, I'll try to do whatever I can on both sides. And it worked. It really helped me eventually surrender deeper and deeper, because surrender is such a tricky thing for the doer to do, because it tries to do surrender, right? It's like, I'm going to be a surrenderer. I'm going to be the best surrenderer that I can.
Yeah. It's like, I am going to get rid of I.
Yes.
I am going to do something to I.
Yeah. So it was so tricky. So a combination of who am I and surrender eventually showed me that I cannot do surrender. I had to,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Super.
I had
Beautiful.
to surrender, the process of surrendering,
Yeah.
for surrender to happen,
Yes.
for surrender to kind of take place.
It's like you can't do something to let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful.
Mm.
This is simply when you talk about surrender. Surrender is basically now the path of bhakti and surrendering to a higher power, to a divine power, or surrendering to something that you know is much greater than you. Call it the universe, consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it. But you're surrendering to something that you know now is more powerful or in control of what you are not in control of. And when it comes to surrender, what Ramana always uh, emphasized, you've you've got to surrender the surrenderer, not the things that you have. You've got to the surrenderer has to let go. So
Yes.
you've got to
Yes.
let go of the person who thinks I am surrendering. That one has to
Mm.
surrender.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, go on.
Yeah. So for me, these exact things were like so tricky. Everything you're saying, and like it's easy to even speak these words now, but like at that time, it was just like so. I was hitting a wall, as if, and all I did really to kind of um, go through this process was I was going to Ramana Maharshi ashram every day, and I would just sit in that little meditation room,
Hmm.
that's next to the hall. As long as they were open, I would just sit there, look at Ramana Maharshi's image. I was always trying to sit, um, you know, in front of the image, right in front of it.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't annoy too many people. It's like, why is he always sitting right here? But I was always sitting there, and looking at Ramana's eyes. And I was feeling every time I was sitting there and being open, I was getting a teaching in silence from him. So it's like the silent sage is speaking to me, you
Yeah.
know. And then I would just sit there for as long as I could. They often only when they closed, I would go away sometimes, and I made this conscious decision once. This was the day of that breakthrough. I would come and sit and go, but that day I decided, until my body itself stands up and leaves, I'm not going to decide from the place of the doer
Yeah.
to get out of meditation, get out of this just sitting here and contemplating at Ramana. And I started noticing my thoughts coming and saying, hey, it's time to go. Hey, you're hungry. Hey, how long will you sit here? I was feeling how my mind was trying to push me or pull me out of that silence. And since I had made that decision to just sit there as long as I could, and until my body rose up from there, I wouldn't do that. I just kind of noticed and noticed and noticed and just stayed silent. I didn't act upon anything. I didn't do anything. So this was my conscious way of overcoming the doer in hindsight. But it was a very simple decision. And I just stayed there so long that my mind became silent. And I felt that kind of freedom again that I had felt in some of these experiences with my teacher. And I felt, and but here it was much more simple. It was not like all fireworks and all that kind of light and just being in a completely different world. Here it was much more simple but deep and profound. And I felt that there was no I. Even saying these words, I felt there was no I. It involves saying words I understand, but these are the only ways we can explain it, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, it was just so clear that there everything was just happening.
Yeah.
Everything was spontaneously working all by itself, and there was nothing or nobody doing anything. Everything was just like a flow, and it was as if just kind of magically things would know what to do, including my own body, including the thoughts that arose. Even they were part of this beautiful symphony. But if I only believed those thoughts, somehow just got controlled by them, and I missed all this beauty
Wow.
that was all around me. And I noticed and noticed how everything was just flowing. And after being in that noticing or pure awareness for a while, I don't know how long, because there was just that flow. Suddenly I noticed my body rose up, and it was not like any action I had taken before, because this action was spontaneous. This action was very selfless. There was no self there.
Yeah.
And I've noticed myself walking and going out, and how like every little muscle moved as part of this beautiful orchestra that was so beautifully, perfectly planned.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody, and a memory was triggered. and there was a hi being said. And and the words that came out, I didn't even know who spoke those words. And yeah, it that's when a lot of things made sense. But all the experiences with my teacher and all these different ways I saw, that it kind of showed me different perspectives, building
Yeah, wow,
a deeper understanding. Mm.
wow, wow. You've had him like that's what would you call it now? It's what? It's like you've been through the entire scenic route of the entire mystic, spiritual visions and auras, and I mean, clairvoyancy, or what all, acting, photography, energy healing. You've had the entire thing right from childhood. It's such a colorful experience. I, on the
Mm.
other hand, when I came into spirituality, it was through the Bhagavad Gita, then Krishna, and Krishna then pushed me towards Shiva. So from Bhakti Yoga, I was pushed into Jnana Yoga,
Mm.
Upanishads and Vedanta and non-duality, and I had nobody at all to talk to, or these things were absolutely new to me. The only reason I stuck with them was because what they were speaking of was exactly what I had been through in devotion with Krishna. So I thought, okay, there
Mm.
must be some truth here. Otherwise, I would never have believed them. And my only aim at the end of that was, after maybe 5 or 600 different books. I think I've got
Wow.
all Ramana's books. I've got all the books. Most, I would say, maybe about 70% of the books that the uh, Ramakrishna mission they have. I've
Mm-hmm.
got
Mm-hmm.
those. I've been through those. I've been through
Wow.
the Bhagavatams, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras. I just wanted to know the truth simply
Mm.
because these books have profound teachings. I want to understand what they have taught in there. I also learned it's very important to know the right questions to ask. As a
Mm.
seeker of the truth, when somebody tells you on the non dual path, give up the search, give up the seeking because it can't be known. All right, good. I agree. You say it can't be known? Great. I have the right to ask you a question. If you know that it can't be known, can you teach me? Can you make me understand why it cannot be known? Because if I understand that, I'll know that which cannot be known, right?
Mm.
That's the only
Wow.
way of knowing something is either you know that what it is, or you know everything else that is it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only two ways. And because what we are talking about is not a word, is not a sound, it cannot be spoken or thought, or it's not a thing. So all the other teachings are teachings about like neti neti and the five sheets and panchakosha, all these things which negate everything. So find out what everything is, negate it, and then what is left, check that out. Like what Ramana says, let what comes come, let what goes go, find out what remains. And so intellectually I had to get to that point where I understand why it cannot be understood,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so I was on my own, and I ended up doing that. And then after that it was like, whoa, I gotta let this out. And then I went on to author 10 books on this, and
Oh.
now I understand it. I know every single word, how it's used. And so a lot of non-dual teachers that we've seen out there even nowadays, it's like, give up the search. And if you
Mm-hmm.
point somebody towards that who wants to know the truth, you tell him you can't know it. And if he doesn't ask you the right question, then he's going to look for experiences. Then I want to experience oneness. I want to experience unity. I want to experience existence, consciousness. You go back into experience. Then you're no longer knowing. You're back
Yeah.
into experiencing. All right. Now tell me, you've got your own methods of teaching this non-duality now. You've got your
Mm.
website, you have a lot of students, you do a lot of workshops, you mentor, you have something called meditative eating. You've got your own teaching system called the, what is it? The integrated awakening
Awakening process.
process. Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about that and how you, mentor somebody who wants to get into non-duality. I love the
Mm.
shell. I can't take my eyes off the shell at the back there. Would you mind just
Yeah.
picking it up and showing it to me?
Oh, it's actually a Zoom background. I'm
Oh,
kidding.
okay. Oh, oh,
Just kidding.
no, no, no. You're holding it. I almost
So,
believed you there. Wow.
yeah, I didn't even clean it
No,
because
that is
I felt
beautiful.
it's perfect as it is, and it's just such a beautiful manifestation of how
Yeah.
life
Nature.
kind
Wow.
of makes things happen so beautifully.
Yeah.
And just looking at the sacred geometry over here, just so
It's
fascinates me
awesome.
every time I look at
Awesome.
that.
Yeah. I couldn't take my eyes off that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you now, you know, people who come to you for non-duality teachings, your uh, integrated awakening process, and
Yeah.
meditative eating, these are things which are very new for me. Meditative eating, I've never heard of it. So talk
Ye-
us through that.
Yes. So before I talk about that,
Yeah.
your story, from what I've heard, is also so fascinating. Has somebody interviewed you? Maybe I would,
No,
I
no.
would.
Yeah, sure, I would. You know what happened? I went through the same process of you, where you're saying
Mm,
that I didn't want to live. I had no reason to wake up in the morning.
mm,
So when you understand that your entire life, not only your entire life, you, as you thought you were, does not exist. When you
mm,
understand that. Secondly, you now understand that you are not doing anything. Everything is being done.
mm,
So now you sit
mm,
back and not doing it, then I just better sit back and watch it happen. And then there's no
yeah, yeah.
motivation and or drive to get up and do anything. So I went through 8 years of that. And then
Wonderful.
I knew one thing, that the day I start doing something, because everything emerges from nothing and subsides back into nothing. And if
Mm,
nothing is the one that's making all this happen, the day I realize that the nothingness is making it happen, I will do everything. So it's
mm.
just recently that that urge has now come back into me. I'm a pop singer, by the way. I'm a
Wow.
Punjabi Bhangra star. So that's the reason I'm so hyper and active. It's like high energy stage shows. And so I've
Yes,
got all
yes.
that energy always. So
Mm.
now I'm back for the past 3, 4 months. I'm like, I need to go out and talk to as
Ah,
many people as I can about this. It doesn't matter whether I do
wonderful.
it to 5 people, 50 people, it does not matter. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do everything I can. So
Yes,
you're
I would
like
be
one of the
honored.
first few people. Yeah, yeah.
I would be honored
Okay,
to, sometimes switch places and interview
sure.
you and hear all about your fascinating
That
experiences
would be
and
great.
how you got to that realization, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
Um,
Yeah, and let's you asked me a few questions about integrated awakening process, etc.
yeah,
Um, you know, I as I went through this depression um, phase where I completely kind of sunk into feeling it was like the rock bottom of my life, where even though I had all these amazing friends, nobody got me.
right.
Even though I was an actor and my mm, movies were running and my posters were there and everything, I was just like, what is this for at all? I just kind of felt none of that mattered, even one bit to me. And it actually felt like suffering to have to go through that. Even just existing uh, in that limitation of the ego felt like suffering, and I didn't want suffering anymore. I'd had it. And in that depth of depression, when I felt I didn't want to live one day more, I had this realization that I was going through this suffering so that I could really understand what was happening. Hmm. And one day it would help me help others. Hmm. One day it would help me to connect with other people's suffering in a way that I can build a bridge from where they are to bring them to see that suffering is an illusion, to see that there is freedom if they choose to go into that. So out of that seeing, understanding, then going through that period, which is called dark night of the soul, for years.
Yeah, yes. Sorry, let me interrupt here, please. Dark Night of the Soul. Please elaborate on that because I've heard it so many times. I don't know what it is. A lot of people do go through it. If you can explain it and just, let me know what it is and how would one recognize that I'm going through this right now and how you get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens when your light awakens is it's so bright that just like in mid-noon, the shadows are the strongest.
Yeah.
Mm. At night, there are no shadows, right? But when the sun is shining so brightly, your shadows become the strongest. In our mind, what happens is that when we've had an experience of awakening, whether it was a beautiful samadhi or a realization of your limitlessness in some way, or sometimes even a painful experience that might be a heartbreak or something that makes you realize um, your self-love, or people experience this in all sorts of ways, right, depending on where they're at. But what happens essentially is the ego becomes afraid that its power is going to be taken away. Mm. It tries to maintain status quo. It tries to stay in its little comfort zone. And whatever new change is happening, it tries to put a container around it,
Yeah.
tries to make it a story, an experience, and says, okay, this is, that thing, and it has understood it. And that is its way of making this go every in a way. It tries to keep its control by sabotaging the process. So it tries to disrupt the spiritual awakening process. And this disruption, this disrupted spiritual awakening, is what becomes dark night of the soul. So, for example, for me, that depression was, in hindsight, because I had these beautiful experiences, it was a way for my ego to take that experience and say, now that you know everything is limitless, there is no meaning to living because you are eternal. So, none of these little things matter to you anymore. Uh, and it actually turned something really beautiful into something really painful. And
Yeah.
and that's the ego's job, because it's just doing its job. It's also part of the beautiful process of self-discovery. Actually, a very important part of self-discovery is the ego, because it creates that illusionary barrier between you and yourself, and makes this whole journey happen, this journey of self-discovery. So, but sometimes it does its job so good that it can turn even the biggest blessing and make it look like a curse. And that curse, I've seen people who come to me in the deepest depths of despair, they're completely feeling lost, like I did, completely in a state of they have no meaning to anything. And that's when people become completely closed to even getting guidance. to even, you know, there's so much self-sabotage. That's the thing. So the only thing holding you back from enlightenment is yourself.
Yes.
There's nothing else. So when they understand that, um, and it's not just understanding, but much more. So that's what I call dark night of soul. That period of self-sabotage that is so deep that people get stuck there for years, even decades, even lifetimes. And because I was there, because my mind was so strong in kind of putting me into that depth, I now am able to see that much more clearly than most people see themselves, because
Yeah.
that's the power of these experiences that taught me.
Yeah.
So the integrated awakening process came out of that, and I in hindsight, in my own experience, and as I started becoming more and more awake, and as I started helping people who naturally came to me, you know, I was sometimes just sitting on mountain Arunachala, and somebody would come to me and ask me about meditation. I was like, how did that happen? And I would sit there, and you know, another person would come and just ask something about self-inquiry, and we would just sit there for hours talking, and a little group would form there, and it, things just kind of took place, and I naturally started sharing the way. And you know, in hindsight, when I realized all these experiences and teachings that came through me were giving me this insight that I could share with others. Um, and in the beginning, I was like, I can help people in all these different ways, but what's the most powerful way I can help somebody? I saw that somebody who is awakening, who has had experiences which have showed them that they are much more, but they haven't really gone on that path to integrate it, or they are on the path but they don't know how to do it. That's where I can help the most, and help them integrate that integrated awakening process. Um, and the biggest thing, you know, I broke it down into 3 pillars, so that it's easier to convey that. And in hindsight, these were the 3 things that really made the biggest difference. So the 3 pillars of awareness, it all begins with awareness. And without that, you know, no matter what else is there, it doesn't matter. And awareness is really about, if somebody doesn't have awareness, it's like walking in the dark, falling and stumbling. Imagine you're in this most beautiful place, but there's absolutely no light, and you're just getting hurt all the time. And awareness is like turning on the light, and now everything is clear. And understanding is the second pillar. That's more about bringing that into the mind and letting people have structures and concepts which are helpful. Because one thing I learned later from my Buddhist mysticism teacher is how important it is to also have structures and concepts in the world that allow us to interact with others and function very well in the world. Um, and that's a big focus, especially in the West. You know, it's really in Tiruvannamalai. If you don't have money, you can, you know, get food from Ramana ashram and other ashrams, but it doesn't work in California. Yeah, so and you know, it's important. Also, one of the ways I kind of bring that in is karma yoga, in a way that you apply the teachings of spirituality into your practical life.
Okay.
About your having a financial support in your life, which helps you not uh, be so worried that
Yes. Yes.
you're when you're sitting down to meditate, you're all you're thinking about is your bills. It doesn't work. uh,
Yeah. So
so
it's
that's
balance.
the second. Yeah,
You're
yeah. So
balancing your
it's
entire life.
exactly.
Yeah.
So balance is the biggest thing here, and the third pillar is about how to manifest uh, a life that you love, and
Wow.
do it in a very real and practical way, which allows you to pursue your spiritual journey in a much deeper way in all the things you do. So meditative eating uh, is what helps there. Meditative eating has a long story too, but actually after my series of samadhis, I couldn't function in a normal way anymore. And when I ate Karela,
Yeah.
this bitter gourd. This is a
Bitter gourd.
vegetable that I hated since my childhood because my
We all do.
mother would feed me, force feed me almost, even though I didn't like it. What happened was after my awakening, when I ate it for the first time from a conscious place, it kind of broke all those old conditionings about it,
Yeah.
and I went back into samadhi eating that.
Oh.
And I was sitting on the roadside near the back of Arunachala, near that Adiyannamalai temple area. And there are a bunch of temples there. There's that Hanuman temple and all that area. And there was all this traffic and everything going on, but I just ate this and it kind of like broke things in my mind, and I just became one with that bitterness so strongly that only the bitterness existed. And then it went beyond the bitterness. There was no name for it. And I became one with it. There was nothing else. And after that, my relationship with food completely shifted in a way. And I would, every time I ate anything, I had to take a moment, a break, because it was just such a strong experience to eat anything. So uh, if you came to me at that time, I would sit in some cafes or restaurants sometimes if I was eating, and I would be eating the same plate for a few hours, and I would just sit there, and I would be like, I was just sitting there. People might have thought I was on drugs or something, but I was just eating, some simple breakfast or something. And I was going into deep samadhis or heightened experiences. And eventually, when somebody asked me to teach them, it became a guided meditation with food, where I help people experience deep states of mind through food, through using all their five senses and helping. There's in a lot of the paths that I walked before, the five senses get a bad rap.
Yeah.
And the body gets a bad rap and saying,
Yeah.
no, you should go beyond your body. But I felt if you use the five senses, which are always rooted in the present moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
because your mind can try to run away, but your senses are always here.
Yeah.
They're just sensing what is in their own way. It may not be the fullness, but they are in the moment. And if you use that anchor to be in the moment, to flood yourself with all sensations, what it can do is let you go into a place where the ego cannot process all of that. And it just kind of grinds to a halt and you become free. Hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My
And
relationship with food recently has, now that we're talking about it, there are times when I actually look at food and I think, I'm gonna eat this. I'm gonna, it's like me eating myself. I'm gonna eat this. I don't believe I'm gonna eat this. How am I gonna eat this? And I would sometimes be in love with it, or
Mm,
sometimes I would be in tears that, I don't believe I'm gonna eat you. You are me. So this kind of, it's comes down to the oneness with everything. So you're feeling oneness with unity with everything, and
yeah.
then emotions can take over like that.
Mm,
Now,
mm,
can I put you on the spot?
mhm.
Here's a
Yes.
newbie. Here's a newbie. Know nothing about non-duality. Uh, I am facing some problems in life. I come to you, and what would you tell me if I was to say that I want freedom? I'm tired
Mm,
of this. I want freedom. What should I do? What's starting point? And this integrated awakening process, is it like a course? Is it over a few weeks? Or is it something that you can do in one sitting with somebody? Does
mm.
it involve somebody? Obviously, they'll have to carry it on, but is it something that they'll understand in one go, or is it some process of activities that they need to do before it all
Yeah.
accumulates together?
Yeah. Um, so as I started sharing the path, what I noticed was whenever I gave people uh, a solution through a technique, through, oh, go do this or meditate like this or whatever it could be, it didn't really work because giving somebody one more technique
Yeah.
and one more belief system or something doesn't really help. But what can really help is a system that has checks and balances, that is sustainable, that lets you keep going and keep going deeper, because this journey is endless. Even after awakening or enlightenment, it just goes deeper. And a lot of people find something and stop. Hmm. And if they stop in a way that they, there's even in stopping, there's a good way of stopping, right? Like Ganga ji says, stop the search, or whatever you
Yeah.
alluded to. But there's also a stopping which the ego says, oh, now I know everything, and I won't grow anymore, I won't evolve anymore. That's a form of self-sabotage. So my approach is to give them a system that works. And for me, what really helped was having a mentor who could see me clearly. And because he had done it, and I've had several mentors, because they had done it themselves and gone through these ups and downs, when they saw me, they could guide me and say, okay, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is what you should do. These are the pitfalls, and this is the right way, right? And when I had that mentorship and the community, people who are facing the same problems as you, um, or they're a little bit ahead of you or even a little bit behind you, doesn't matter. But doing it together, having that support system, especially when you feel so isolated because nobody else understands you. Your
Yeah.
friends who usually got you now think you're weird. Your family thinks you're going crazy. And this is what I hear a lot. But when you have a community where you can share your difficulties and not be judged, and actually supported and inspired to do better, this, and that clear direction of where are you really going, what is really spiritual awakening. Hmm. What, understanding that this is a doorway to enlightenment, actually, not just some aliens trying to contact you or something. Like people have all sorts of weird ideas that come with spiritual awakening sometimes. So having the clear understanding, so the three pillars: mentorship, community, and that clear understanding. So that is what I offer. And I offer a free workshop for people where I talk through the importance of these things, and first try to kind of talk about what doesn't work, mm, and what, and then talk about what does work. Having helped hundreds of people, the patterns that emerge from this. Mm. And that, that free workshop gives a lot, but I have a community of students, or mentees who are doing this together. And it's a lifelong journey, but I try to set them up for success, with giving them all the basics and the understanding over a shorter period of time, that gets them set up for success in the best way possible. Because this journey can be sometimes very confusing, sometimes treacherous.
That's why
So
you've got if you're looking for understanding, then you've got to actually get down to knowing what the truth is. It's like you're talking about understanding. I do get a lot of people who ask me, um, and this I'm sure you also get a lot of people who will ask you. Now, you and all the other people who seem to be have who have awakened, and the saints and sages of the past all have been calling the entire universe an illusion, a dream, a mirage, a magic show. It's unreal, it's untrue, it's false. Now, look, I'm touching this mic. How can you tell me it's not real? How do I believe it's not real? I am seeing, I am talking. Can you make me understand that how this is not real? How do I
mm,
believe this is not real? You know? And
mm,
it's a logical question,
yeah.
very logical, because we before my awakening, I would question it. Yeah, I mean, either you've got you're way beyond, it's just you're too far ahead, I haven't reached there, or otherwise what you're talking is pure BS.
Mhm,
it doesn't
mhm.
make sense.
Yeah.
And now when you understand it logically, intellectually, then you can easily explain it. Now, what would you say to somebody who says, how do I believe the entire universe is an illusion?
Yes, that's a great question, and as you said, something I get a lot as well. So now I would explain it. It's technology has made it so much easier to explain this. Imagine you're wearing Apple Vision Pro on your head.
Okay.
And this device, you've seen it now on social media. People are walking around with it in traffic and driving and everything. But once you put it on, you see a world that nobody else sees.
Yes.
In your world, you can see a TV floating around, where you can watch whatever, a browser window or something. And the one, your phone screen is here, and the one, your keyboard is floating in midair,
Yeah.
right? And nobody else who sees you sees what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And if you turn that dial and if you're watching a movie, the entire world around you disappears, and you're sitting on top of a volcano watching a movie.
Yeah.
Even though you might be sitting in your chair, you're in a completely different world. You might be traveling in a subway, but for you, you are experiencing something that for you is real. So if you touch the keyboard, you can say, hey, I can see this keyboard, I can touch it. When I touch it here, things change. I can control things. And
Yeah.
so does that make it real in a way? So for example, in that example, for you it's completely real. And you're enjoying that experience, and nobody can tell you not to. Nobody has any idea what's going on with your personal experience. But at the same time, what happens when you remove that glass? What happens when you come to this reality and touch this computer and keyboard in front of you that seems a little bit more real, right? It's
Yeah,
still kind of very similar, but it's another level of reality.
yeah,
Mm. And from that perspective, it feels real.
yes,
And I can touch this and touch the mic and say, oh, my senses say they are real. Mm. But what happens if you remove this device? Just like you removed your Apple Vision Pro, what happens if you remove this device that is,
right,
filtering all this and processing all this, just like Apple Vision Pro processes, whatever you see, it processes it,
yeah,
and it's very fast. I'm very curious and I'm very technical. I was also a software engineer at a point, and so I'm really curious about these things. And it processes things so fast. It's like 13 milliseconds is the difference between what you see, what's something happening, and it processes it and changes it so it can overlay its reality on top of this normal reality.
wow,
In the same way, your mind processes this reality so quickly that you
yeah.
can't even catch it.
It's
But
instantaneous. Mm.
yeah, but if you are able to slow it down, if you're able to notice it and
Yeah.
catch it before it catches you, mm,
Mm.
you will notice how it's processing everything and changing things. Mm. And that will be the loophole where you can hack your your headset that you're wearing without even knowing that you're wearing it. Mm,
Nice, nice, very
mm,
nice. Super,
mm.
brilliant example.
Thank you.
Uh, as a seeker of truth, I would probe further, and I always urge people who are on the path, keep asking questions until you get clarity. So for that, I would say that's a brilliant example. That's almost like you're creating a dream world while you're awake. You're creating your own world while you're awake and you're experiencing it, and then you take it off.
Yes.
It's like dream over. I
Mm,
would. My question, a comeback would be, what about nature? What about
mm,
mountains? What about what these are all man-made things. What about natural stuff that is there? We can't
mm,
create that. Anyway,
mhm,
I take it very simple. I make it very simple because when you
mhm,
understand words and your entanglement and your entire uh, uh, reason for thinking that you're bound is words, sounds, and what they mean to you in your mind.
yes. Yes.
And if you know and you understand sound, words, and what they mean, and
Mm,
you know what, and you take actually every word for what it means, you will not be left with anything except awakening because there is no
mm,
word that can point to that. And I would, what I normally tell somebody is, uh, if you experienced a real universe, right, then there is a false self.
mm,
You haven't checked the self, and we'll come to that. And if the awakened people are saying that I am awake and I'm experiencing a false universe, then the difference is one who is
mm,
identified in a different perspective compared to
mm,
you, right?
mm,
So when you say the universe is real, let's take a look at what you mean by the universe is real. What is the
mm,
universe made of? Made of things. If you look around you, you're just in an ocean of things,
mm,
right? There is no place where there is no thing. Every place has a thing. You are surrounded. You are, if you consider this to be you, you are surrounded in an ocean of things, right? And
mm,
if they are real, good. Everything that is a thing is real, logically. Second, you have internal feelings, thoughts, emotions, memories, imagination, all those things that are internal. Those are all in the form of thought. So
mm,
everything you think, everything that you perceive, everything that you imagine, that is real. You say that, yes, it's real because I perceive it, I can think it. The thought, what I think might not be real, but the fact that I'm thinking it is real, right?
Mm,
Okay, great. So things are real outside, thoughts are real inside,
mm,
right? From a logical person's point of view, simple. Now, my
yeah.
question is, when you say for I to be real, it has to
Mm,
be either a thing or a thought.
mm,
Apart from this, there is no other reality. There is external, internal. And when you
mm,
say let's take a look at I.
mhm,
Is I a thing? When you
mm,
say you'll never feel that I am a thing. And if you say this is I, then every part of the body has a different name and a different function. There is no part of the body that's called I.
mm.
So I
Yes.
is not a real thing,
Mm,
right? And then come down into your thoughts. When you say I thought, the thought I will give you a mental image of the body.
mm,
And when you've already, uh, concluded that the body is not I, then your mind is projecting something that is not you, is imagining it to be you.
mm,
I is not a thought, a real thought, and it's not a real thing. So it's an imaginary I experiencing a real universe. Or,
mm.
from the awakened point of view, a real I experiencing an imaginary universe.
Wonderful. Mm, mm,
This is now something that nobody can argue with, because when you say everything is real, very good. Things are real. Are you a thing? All my thoughts and feelings are there. They are real. Are you a feeling? Are you a
mm,
thought?
mm,
Yeah. So you,
mm,
when people ask such questions, I say you're experiencing an imaginary I. So you've seen
mm.
everything is real. Please take a look at who it is that is saying that is real.
Yeah, yeah. So I use these technology kind of ways to explain, because somehow, especially people in the West, it's a
Yeah.
little bit easier to kind of visualize
Especially
it and get it.
with the youngsters, it would be very
Yes.
easy for them to grasp using the examples of a mobile phone, a computer,
Yeah.
a car,
Yes.
like the Apple device you just said. Yeah. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Like even before that, there were these virtual reality games, and I was a gamer, as I said, in my
Yeah.
teenagers. So that's how I understood. Like in the games, you have an avatar,
Yeah.
of that's such a name, right? You call it an avatar. You have incarnated into a game. Isn't that
Yeah.
funny? And that avatar is walking in this game world,
Yeah.
and you believe that avatar to be yourself.
Yeah.
And every time that avatar gets hit and the heart goes down, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I should be careful. And then you have this thing like, oh, I have to achieve this objective of the game, and you believe it so strongly that when I was a gamer, I would get so upset when I lost.
Wow.
I would get so like, it has such a charge of reality to it,
Yes.
just
Yes.
even when you know it's a game.
Yeah.
Hmm. And in the same way, because you have attached yourself to this avatar which you have created in your mind, saying, oh, this is my name, this is what I do, this is my objective, this is what I don't like. You have written a script, your story, and you've taken it to be so real that it, just kind of takes over your entire experience, and you don't see everything else that's happening. So there are many levels of illusion we can talk about, but in another way I talk about is, like you asked about, what about nature, what about
Yeah.
things. I had this dream where I was traveling in this beautiful country and experiencing all this beautiful nature, and in that dream somehow I came to a place which made me realize it was a dream. And I somehow became conscious in that dream. And I realized all this is an illusion. And then I suddenly woke up and I'm like, what if I wake up from this dream? uh, and that experience was so powerful that really made me think. And I also realized in that dream, the all the mountains and nature and everything that was there,
Yeah.
as soon as I woke up, completely disappeared, just like
Oh.
taking off a VR headset.
Yeah.
And and I when I went to bed and I slept, none of those things existed,
Yeah.
and I created them out of my creatorhood in that dream, so I can have an experience
Yeah.
of myself through through that imagination. Hmm.
Yeah.
And what if I'm doing the same thing on another level, as above so below, as below so above, you
Yeah.
know so the dreams that we have are actually pointing us towards
Yeah.
the truth, to show us that there is something in a similar way happening
Yes.
in this
Yes.
dream. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so beautiful. That is so
Mm.
beautiful. It reminded me of King Janaka's story. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
With
Oh my God.
Ashtavakra?
Ashtavakra Gita is my
Yeah.
favorite book.
Yeah. That is good. Well, his story of his experiences with the Ashtavakra. He uh, King Janaka suddenly hears his his secretary comes running. King, King, wake up! The enemy has attacked. We must go out and fight them. And Janaka wakes up and gets his army ready, and they go out to battle. The other king has come with his army, and they have a fierce battle. And Janaka loses the battle and is taken captive. And the king who has taken him captive says, I am gonna banish you from this kingdom. I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm gonna banish you. Get out of this entire place. It belongs to me now. So now King Janaka, who was the king just a moment ago, is now walking on the streets with torn clothes, trying to get to the edge of the kingdom so he could cross over to the other kingdom. He's got to leave this one. And so he reaches the border and he crosses over, and he's so hungry by this time. And he sees at the other end there's somebody who's serving food to poor people, and they're in a line. And so he stands in the line, and he's waiting. Once it gets to his turn, he looks and the food is finished. And so this person he's King Janaka is like, please give me anything to eat, please give me anything. And this person says, oh, let me scrape off the little pieces that are stuck at the bottom of the bowl, and I'll give you that. So he scrapes them out and he gives them to Janaka, and Janaka is about to eat that, and a kite flies by and hits it, and all of it falls down, and Janaka
Mm.
can't take it anymore, and he says, ah, and he wakes up from the bed and he realizes it was an entire dream. Okay?
Mm.
This whole thing
Mm.
was an entire dream. Now,
Mm.
him being a philosopher did not dismiss it. So now he's thinking, wow, is that real or was this real?
Mm.
What I experienced there, was that real or is this real right now? And all day, that's all he's doing. He's sitting and talking to everybody. He's, ye sach ya wo sach. Is this real
Mm.
or is that real? And the story spreads around the whole city that the king has gone mad. All day he's just sitting and saying ye sach ya wo sach. And Ashtavakra gets to hear of the story and he goes to see the king, and he knows what's happened. He's an enlightened being, and so Janaka says ye sach ya wo sach, and everybody's like he's gone mad. And Ashtavakra says, king, when you were defeated by the enemy and you were dragged outside the kingdom, was all this that you're experiencing right now here, was it there then? And Janaka says, no. And he says, O king, but what you experienced there as that entire tragedy, is any of that here right now? And Janaka looks around and says, no. And Ashtavakra says, so, O king, neither that is real, neither this is real. And Janaka is, oh, so is nothing real? Is there nothing that's real then? And Ashtavakra says, O king, when you were there, did you experience that? Were you there? And Janaka says, yes, I was there, of course. And right now, are you here? He says, yes.
mm,
So, O king, neither that was real, neither this is real. You are the real truth.
mm, mm,
So, same thing like the dream thing that you said.
mm.
Brilliant. Nice to hear these stories. I think we've gone quite long with this. I want you to give what you offer to seekers of the truth, or what you offer on the website, your workshop, the free workshops, where they can
Mm,
get in touch with you, all the stuff that you do on social media, your website, what it's named. I will be putting the links below this
mm,
video. And
mhm,
how can somebody get in touch with you? Because you seem like, from the conversation we've had, you've you're a straightforward, no BS person. You're just talking just the right amount of words, nothing extra, nothing less,
mm,
and somebody who genuinely wants to help other people. And
mm.
you come across as that kind of a being. And
Ah,
where can anybody get in touch with you?
thank you. We see ourselves in our reflections.
Yeah.
Thank you for seeing that. Um, y- I offer these free workshops, and you can just visit my website, awakenwithra.com. Um, Awaken with Ra, and if you search that, I think you will also find that on Instagram and Facebook as well. But if you just go to the website, you'll find the link to sign up for the free workshop.
Okay.
And i I try to give that entire kind of, as much as I can, the full view of that in the workshop. And if somebody wants to work with me deeper, they can also just send me an email if they're interested to kind of explore if this is right for them. Ra at awakenwithra.com, or on the website you can also, there's a you can find a way to contact me on the website as well.
Okay. So
Mhm.
thank you so much, Ra. And it's been an
Mhm.
absolute honor. I'm going to put all your links to the website. And from the website, I'm sure your social media links are all there.
Mm.
And for anybody listening to, I hope you've enjoyed this man. Uh, I can't even imagine Sai Baba, the mystics, the teachers from Europe, your father, energy healing, clairvoyance. I mean, what not? What have we left out? You've been through everything. And there would be a lot of people who have had some of those experiences.
Mm.
And Ra is the man to go to. Get in
Mhm.
touch with him. I will put all the links down there. And thank you so much, Ra. It's been an absolute
Yeah.
honor.
Thank
I'm
you. I'm
so
so
humbled.
grateful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Mhm.